Hey everyone, and welcome back to Thought Pairing. I'm P. Katie,
Hi, everyone.
and I'm here with my friend Suchi.
Hey.
So, we both just finished Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money, and
Yeah,
we had to get together and talk about it.
absolutely.
It really got us thinking about,
Yeah. Yeah.
how much our mindset, our emotions,
Right. our
our backgrounds, all of that plays into how we handle money.
Absolutely. I think this book really, it flips the script on what we think we know
Yeah.
about building wealth.
Yeah.
It's less about, being a financial genius and way more about
Right.
understanding your own psychology and biases and,
Yeah, let's unpack that.
yeah.
One of the things that really struck me was this whole idea that
Yes.
financial success isn't necessarily tied to intelligence.
Yes.
Housel uses those contrasting stories. You remember
Yeah.
Ronald Read, the janitor, who quietly amassed like an $8 million fortune
Right.
through decades of just patient investing.
Yeah, Ronald Read is amazing. And then you have Richard Scone,
Yeah.
Harvard MBA, former Merrill Lynch executive,
Yeah.
who ends up bankrupt.
Right. And these stories really drive home Housel's point that
Really?
it's your behavior with money that
Yeah.
matters more than how smart you are.
Yes. And I think, you probably know people like that in your life.
Right.
Like someone who's incredibly intelligent but terrible with their finances.
Totally. Or vice versa, right?
Exactly.
Someone who maybe doesn't have a fancy degree,
Yes.
but they've got a knack for saving and investing. And
Yeah. And what's so fascinating is he goes beyond just presenting these anecdotes. He actually dives into why this is the case. Why are some people, so good with money?
yeah,
And some people so bad. And he argues that we all develop these unique mental models of how money works
right.
that are largely shaped by our individual experiences in the environment we grew up in.
Totally. Like, it makes you realize that someone who lived through the Great Depression, for example,
Yes,
might view risk and reward very differently
totally.
from someone who came of age during the dot-com boom,
Of course. Yeah,
right? And think about how their investment strategies might differ.
for sure. And even something like whether you lived through a period of high inflation
Right.
versus stable prices can drastically impact how you view things like bonds.
So knowing this, how do we avoid
Yeah.
letting our past experiences completely dictate our financial decisions, especially since those experiences are limited?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think that's where Housel's emphasis on recognizing those psychological factors at play comes in.
Okay.
He talks about this concept of getting the goalpost to stop moving,
Yes.
which I think really resonated with me.
It's that human tendency to always want more.
Always more.
Even when we reach a level of financial security, we're like, okay, now I need this.
Totally.
And then it's like, okay, now I need that.
It never ends.
We're never truly satisfied.
Yeah, he uses that great story of John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard.
Oh, yeah.
And Joseph Heller, the author. They were at a party and they're talking about this billionaire hedge fund manager who's just making an insane amount of money.
Yeah.
And Heller's response is yes, but I have something he will never have enough.
I love that anecdote.
It's so good.
Because it highlights this trap we often fall into.
Yes.
We chase wealth
Yeah.
thinking it will bring us happiness.
Yeah.
But we forget
Money.
that true contentment
Yeah.
often comes from,
Feeling like you have enough.
yes.
And this idea of enough actually ties into another important concept from the book,
Okay.
which is wealth is what you don't see.
Okay, so explain that one.
Yeah.
That sounds a little counterintuitive.
Yeah. So think about it. Building wealth often involves delaying gratification, making choices
Right.
that aren't outwardly visible to others. It's about saving, diligently investing wisely,
Right.
resisting that urge to keep up with the Joneses.
You might have a neighbor with a fancy car and a huge house.
Exactly.
They could be drowning in debt.
Totally.
Meanwhile, you're
Yeah.
steadily building a solid financial foundation,
Yeah.
even if it's not as flashy.
Yeah, and he tells that story about the valet
Oh, yeah?
who drives all these luxury cars for a living.
Right.
And he realizes that a lot of the owners aren't actually wealthy at all.
Yeah.
They're just prioritizing appearances over true financial security.
And it's a great illustration of how
Absolutely.
we often confuse spending with wealth.
Yes. Especially today, I think, with the rise of social media.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so easy to get caught up in
Comparing ourselves to others.
comparing ourselves and
Yeah.
feeling like we need to project this image of success.
And that's why I think Housel's message is so powerful in this book, is that, true wealth isn't about keeping up with the latest trends or buying things you can't afford.
Right.
It's about making choices that align with your long-term goals and values.
Your long-term goals and values, exactly.
It's about building a life that's truly fulfilling, both financially and emotionally.
And that leads us to another crucial point, and I think it's a concept that can completely change how you think about saving and investing.
Okay.
Which is the power of compounding.
Ah, yes. The snowball effect.
The snowball effect.
Even small, consistent actions.
Yes.
Like saving a portion of your income. Or regularly investing in the market can lead to incredible results over time.
Incredible results over time. Yeah, he does such a fantastic job of explaining this using these really vivid analogies.
Yeah.
Like he compares it to a snowball rolling downhill, gathering more and more snow as it goes, or to the exponential growth that we see in technology. Like think about how quickly smartphones have evolved in just a few years.
Yeah, it can be a little mind-blowing.
It's crazy.
To grasp at first, but once you truly understand compounding, it's almost magical.
Totally.
And it shifts your perspective, you know, from short-term games to the long game.
To the long game, yeah. And that long-term perspective is essential, I think, especially in the world of investing.
Right.
Which kind of brings us to another key takeaway, which is survival is key.
Okay.
You know?
Right, because avoiding those catastrophic financial setbacks, those events that could completely wipe you out, is crucial for long-term success.
Crucial. It's not just about maximizing returns. It's also about protecting yourself from ruin.
Right.
Like he uses the example of successful card counters in casinos.
Okay.
You know, even though they have an edge, they still maintain a large enough bankroll to withstand losing streaks.
So it's about managing risk.
Exactly.
Not getting overconfident.
Yeah.
And having that cushion to weather the inevitable ups and downs.
It's like having a survival mentality when it comes to your money.
Right.
You know, it's not always about being the most aggressive or taking the biggest risks. It's about staying in the game long enough to benefit from that power of compound.
This is all great stuff, and I think we're just scratching the surface here.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many other valuable insights in this book, and I can't wait to dig into them even further.
Me too.
But before we move on, what are some of the things that have stood out to you so far? Like, what really resonates?
Yeah. For me, it's the emphasis on the psychological and emotional aspects of money. You know, it's a reminder that we're not robots.
Right.
We're humans making decisions in a complex and often unpredictable world.
And that understanding, I think, is incredibly empowering.
Totally.
Because it allows us to take control of our finances and make choices that are truly aligned with our values and goals.
Yeah. And before we jump into the next part of our conversation, we would love to hear from you.
Yes.
What are some of your biggest takeaways from the psychology of money?
Let us know.
Let us know in the comments below.
And if you're enjoying this deep dive, make sure to give it a thumbs up.
Yes.
And subscribe to Thought Pairing.
Subscribe.
More thought-provoking discussions.
Yeah.
Hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our future videos.
Yes.
See you in the next one.
So, you know, one thing that really struck me was Housel's discussion of separating luck from skill.
Okay.
It's so easy to look at successful investors and attribute their achievements solely to, brilliance or talent.
Like they've got some secret formula
Exactly.
for picking winning stocks or timing the market perfectly.
But Housel challenges that notion.
Okay.
He argues that luck and risk play a massive role, and it's dangerous to ignore their influence.
Right.
You know, he uses the example of Bill Gates.
Okay.
Highlighting how a series of fortunate events, many outside of Gates's control, contributed to his incredible success.
Yeah. It's a good reminder for all of us.
Totally.
Especially, those of us who invest.
Yeah.
Bill Gates is obviously a brilliant guy.
Right.
But would he have been as successful if he hadn't been one of the few kids with access to a computer in the early days of personal computing?
Exactly.
Easily.
Right. It was a stroke of luck that positioned him.
Yeah.
To capitalize on that emerging tech boom.
Right. So while talent and drive are important,
yes,
we also need to acknowledge the role of chance and circumstance.
Circumstance. Yeah.
I think that's a humbling realization.
Totally.
For anyone involved in, in investing or entrepreneurship.
Yeah. It takes some of the pressure off.
It does.
You don't have to be the smartest person in the room to succeed.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about being in the right place at the right time.
Right.
And recognizing those opportunities when they arise.
And speaking of taking the pressure off,
Howells
also talks about how we view failure. He challenges this idea that it's always a sign of incompetence.
Totally.
Sometimes it's simply a reflection of the inherent risks involved in any endeavor.
Totally.
So it's not necessarily about avoiding failure at all costs.
Right.
But about learning from those experiences and developing resilience.
Exactly. He encourages us to develop what he calls like a survival mentality, where you view failure as a learning opportunity and a chance to bounce back stronger.
And that ties in perfectly, I think,
yes,
with his concept of the barbelled personality.
The barbelled personality.
Where you balance optimism about the future
yes,
with a healthy dose of paranoia. What could go wrong?
It's this fascinating blend of long-term optimism, believing that like the odds are in your favor over time,
right,
while simultaneously like maintaining this healthy awareness of potential risks.
So it's not about being reckless.
Yeah.
But also not being so risk-averse that you never take any chances.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot.
It's finding that balance.
Yeah. And he even suggests like a barbelled approach to your money.
Okay.
You know, taking risks with a portion of your investments.
Okay.
While being like incredibly cautious with another portion.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah. You're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
But you're also not so afraid of risk that you miss out on potential growth opportunities.
It's about creating that balance.
Yes.
Between security and calculated risk-taking.
You know, one thing I found fascinating was his discussion of tail events.
Yeah, tail events. Can you explain what those are?
Yeah. So tail events are those rare, unpredictable occurrences.
Okay.
That can have a huge impact.
Okay.
So think like winning the lottery or experiencing a global pandemic.
Okay.
Or in the world of investing, like stumbling upon a company like Apple or Amazon in the early days.
Yeah. These events are hard to predict.
Very hard to predict.
And they often defy conventional wisdom.
Totally.
Like who would have thought
that
Amazon would become what it is today?
But as Housel points out, these tail events have an outsized influence on everything from market returns to individual financial success.
It makes you realize that sometimes the unexpected can have a bigger impact than what we can
plan for
or even imagine.
Right. And recognizing the possibility of these tail events, I think, can help us better understand why things happen the way they do.
Okay.
It also reminds us to not make like overly simplistic assumptions about cause and effect.
This ties into his critique, I think, of using history as a perfect guide for the future.
Right.
We tend to look at past events and assume
they'll repeat themselves.
Yeah, that they'll repeat themselves, but that's not always the case.
Not always, especially in a world where innovation and change are constant.
Right.
Like the world we live in today.
Yeah, he uses the evolution of the tech industry as an example.
Yes.
Imagine trying to predict the rise of smartphones or the internet.
Right.
Based on data from the 1950s.
It'd be impossible. Technology has advanced so rapidly, it's hard to even comprehend how different things were just a few decades ago.
So while history can offer valuable lessons, it's crucial to be adaptable. And to recognize when those old paradigms no longer apply.
Exactly. We have to be open to new possibilities and embrace change.
Which brings us to another important point, I think, and that is freedom.
Freedom, yes.
I think it's safe to say that most of us want to feel like we have choices and control over our lives.
Absolutely.
And Housel argues that, financial freedom, having that control over your time and choices, is perhaps the highest dividend money can pay.
It's not just about accumulating wealth for its own sake. Right. It's about using money as a tool to achieve that sense of freedom and autonomy.
You remember his story about working as a valet?
Oh, yeah.
And driving all those expensive cars?
Yes.
He realized that the allure of those material possessions was often fleeting.
Yeah, it wasn't about the car itself. It was about what it represented.
Status, success,
maybe even validation.
And yet he rarely even noticed the drivers.
It's the perfect example of what he calls the man in the car paradox.
Okay.
People often think if I had that car, people would think I'm cool.
Right.
But in reality, people are probably too busy thinking about how cool they would look in that car to even notice you.
It's such a brilliant observation.
Right, it's so true.
We often misdirect our efforts, I think.
Totally.
When seeking validation or fulfillment, we focus on these external things instead of cultivating
true inner contentment.
Yes, and that ties back to the importance, I think, of defining our own values and what success truly means to us.
Exactly.
So it's about aligning our financial decisions with our values.
Yes.
Not just blindly chasing societal expectations.
Right, or comparing ourselves to others.
And that might mean making choices that seem irrational.
Irrational.
From a purely financial perspective.
Right, like maybe you decide to take a lower-paying job.
Right. That brings you more joy and fulfillment, even though it might not seem financially logical.
Or maybe you decide to prioritize experiences over material possessions.
Yes.
Even if it means saving for longer
to
reach your financial goals.
And Housel argues that, like, those emotional considerations are just as valid as the numbers on a spreadsheet.
It's about finding that balance between logic and emotion.
Yes.
And recognizing that you know what works for one person.
Totally.
Might not work for another.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
And he does offer some practical advice, I think, too.
Yeah.
He emphasizes the importance of saving.
The saving.
Regardless of your income level.
It's a great reminder that building wealth isn't just about earning a lot of money.
Right.
It's about consistently putting aside a portion of what you earn.
No matter how small.
No matter how small. And viewing saving not as deprivation, but as a way to gain control over your time and choices.
Housel also points out that nothing worthwhile comes for free.
Right. There's always a price to pay.
And that price, especially in the world of investing, often involves
volatility,
uncertainty, and even regret.
Regret.
But if we view those things as fees, as the cost of admission,
the price of admission
to potentially greater returns,
we
can approach them with a different mindset.
Exactly. It's not about trying to avoid those costs altogether because that's impossible.
Right.
It's about recognizing they're part of the game and deciding whether the potential payoff is worth the price of admission.
I think this resonates with something else he talks about, which is being wary of getting caught up in other people's stories.
Yes.
You know, we often see what others are doing with their money and try to replicate it.
Yes.
Without considering whether it aligns with our own goals and risk tolerance.
He uses the example of day traders. Like, their strategies might make sense for them, given their time horizons and risk appetite. But those same strategies could be disastrous for, like, a long-term investor.
So it's about defining your own game.
Yes.
Setting your own rules.
Your own rules.
And not being swayed by the actions or opinions of others.
Right.
Who are playing a different game.
We're playing a different game. Exactly. One thing I really appreciated was how he ended the book. With, like, a personal reflection on his own financial journey.
Yes. He shared his own wins and losses.
He did.
And the valuable lessons he learned along the way.
Yeah. And it makes him relatable.
It does.
You know, it reminds us that he's a human being just like us.
Right.
Who also grapples with these same financial challenges.
It makes his advice more believable, too.
I think so.
Because he's not just preaching from some ivory tower.
Right.
He's been in the trenches and experienced these things firsthand.
Yeah, and it's refreshing to see someone in the finance world advocating for a balanced and reasonable approach. Rather than promoting get-rich-quick schemes or overly complicated strategies.
He emphasizes the importance of defining what enough means for you. And using money as a tool to build a life that is meaningful and fulfilling.
On your own terms?
On your own terms.
So what does all of this mean for our viewers?
Yeah.
What are some key takeaways they can apply to their own lives?
Yeah, it really is a must-read for anyone who wants to, like, you know, improve their financial well-being and build a life of greater freedom and purpose.
Absolutely.
It's not just about, you know, becoming a millionaire.
Right.
It's about understanding those deeper forces that drive our financial decisions. And using that knowledge to create a life that feels truly aligned with our values.
Yeah, and I think we've covered a lot of ground today, but you know, this deep dive has really only scratched the surface of what the psychology of money has to offer.
There's so much more to uncover in the book itself.
For sure.
It's one of those books you can come back to again and again.
Totally.
And still gain new insights each time. So we highly encourage you to pick up a copy and explore these ideas further.
Yes.
And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Oh, yeah.
What resonated with you the most?
Yes.
What are some of your own experiences with the psychology of money?
Yeah. Have you ever made a financial decision that seemed irrational at the time?
Yeah.
But turned out to be the right choice in the long run?
Let us know.
Share your insights and stories in the comments below.
Yeah.
We love hearing from you and learning from your experiences.
And while you're down there, don't forget to hit that like button.
Yes.
And subscribe to Thought Pairing for more deep dives.
More deep dives.
The fascinating topics.
We'll see you in the next one.